Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the New Jersey Big Data Alliance's 8th Annual Symposium, hosted this year by Princeton University. I'm Spencer Reynolds of Princeton's Office of Corporate Engagement and Foundation Relations. Along with my co-organizers in the Princeton Entrepreneurship Council and Princeton's Office of Information Technology, and our partners from the other New Jersey colleges and universities, we are so glad you can join us today. We'll hear more about the Big Data Alliance in just a few minutes, but as many of you know, NJBDA is a consortium of 16 New Jersey universities with a mission to catalyze collaboration among academia, industry, and government in building advanced computing and analytics capabilities in the state of New Jersey. This symposium is a key part of our annual activities to convene stakeholders and promote our mission. I have a few organizing points before our official opening remarks from the state of New Jersey and from Princeton University. The title of our symposium this year is Smart State, Big Data for Community Impact, which is organized around the question of how states, cities, and communities can best work with academia and industry in using big data to improve equity, sustainability, and prosperity for urban residents. The first day's program today focuses on the practitioners' perspectives, the vision and implementation of how cities are using data science for community impact. We will start with welcome remarks from Dr. Beth Noveck, Chief Innovation Officer of the state of New Jersey, then from Andrea Goldsmith, Dean of Princeton School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and from Dr. Peggy Brennan-Tonetta of Rutgers University, President of the NJBDA. And then we'll have today's keynote by Stephen Goldsmith from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government on new tools and new frontiers for community impact through data. And then we'll have our panel discussion of city practitioners on vision and implementation of smart data for communities. We'll close our first day with 2 concurrent workshop sessions, one for practitioners on COVID data intelligence programs, and one for students on experiential learning through capstones. As attendees, you may join either workshop at your choice. And throughout our 2 days, we have a virtual poster session available for everyone to view at any time, featuring presentations on student and faculty research in various big data topics. You can access these presentations at any time during the symposium by using the link in the chat or by going to the agenda page on njbda.org and clicking on each poster presentation. So that's today's agenda. Then tomorrow will be the academic perspective, how researchers use smart data to increase our understanding of urban social challenges and potential solutions in more detail. Tomorrow we'll have a keynote by Tara Dawson-McGinnis of newamerica.org, then a panel of academic researchers, and finally, our research flash talks by faculty and students at New Jersey's universities and colleges. Now that's all tomorrow. Now for some brief logistics notes for both days. All sessions are being recorded for later viewing. We don't have any dedicated break time in the schedule, so please make your own break time as needed. And finally, we will have a post-event survey emailed to all attendees. It's very short, just to get your feedback on the structure of the event and the content. Now, to officially open the event, we're excited to have Dr. Beth Noveck, the state of New Jersey's first Chief Innovation Officer, a position she was appointed to by Governor Phil Murphy in August 2018. As State Innovation Officer, Dr. Noveck, a native of New Jersey, focuses on enhancing innovation in government and in the Garden State's economy. Dr. Noveck serves as the chair of the Governor's Future of Work Task Force and sits on the Governor's Jobs and Economic Opportunity Council. Dr. Noveck has written multiple books and has been published extensively on how technology can improve governing. Over to Beth.
Hi, my name is Beth Noveck, and on behalf of New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, it's really my sincere pleasure to welcome you to the 8th Annual New Jersey Big Data Alliance Symposium. Innovation, the concept of creating, developing, and executing novel solutions to meaningful problems, is really central to New Jersey's success. This is due in no small part to fostering one of the nation's leading K-12 and higher education systems. We have, as you probably know, one of the nation's most highly educated workforces, the nation's fourth highest percentage of millennials with college degrees, and the world's highest concentration of scientists and engineers per square mile. We all know that innovation plays an important role in our work, but never has the challenge been greater than during the past year. And COVID-19 has really created a new appetite and urgency for data. One of the most visible examples of this practice was Governor Murphy's daily COVID-19 press briefings, where data really took center stage. New Jerseyans became well acquainted with timely and relevant and contextualized data tracking. Those metrics really helped to inform all of our critical decisions on a personal level, but also helped us as the state to predict the spread of the virus and help us to respond more effectively. You helped us with this data collection. New Jersey created a symptom tracker to inform the public during this time of really high uncertainty. And it also provided the opportunity for us as the state to collect data from you about where possible hotspots were really developing, enabling the Department of Health to proactively deploy resources by predicting the spread of the virus. To date, that symptom tracker tool has logged over 500,000 uses. In partnership with leading data scientists and epidemiologists, New Jersey conducted extensive data modeling and predictive analytics pertaining to COVID-19 prevalence and hospital capacity and PPE usage, ensuring that we would deploy resources in the most efficient way possible. We also used data and insights from 211, our call center, from our COVID-19 portal, covid19.nj.gov, and other sources to target how we delivered resources. And the strategic sharing of data, both between and among agencies and with the public, enabled us all to better understand the virus and especially to understand its impact based on race and class in the state. The Murphy administration is committed to opening up more data, sharing more data between agencies of government, and collaborating with the data science community to make use of this data to the end of fostering more evidence-based government, but also a stronger, fairer economy and prompting the growth of more data-driven businesses and jobs. So we're training more public servants now in uses of data via the Innovation Skills Accelerator. And we invite you to take one of our free courses on data analytics there. You can check them out at skills.innovation.nj.gov or sign up for our Innovation Skills newsletter at innovation.nj.gov/signup. Thank you to NJBDA for convening this community and for advocating for infrastructure and education for data science in New Jersey. It couldn't be more important or timely. So enjoy the symposium, and thank you to NJBDA and to all our attendees and participants and sponsors for being part of innovation in New Jersey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beth, and to the entire Office of Innovation for your support of the Big Data Alliance. Next, I'm excited to introduce Dr. Andrea Goldsmith, Princeton's Dean of Engineering and Applied Science, and the Arthur LeGrand Doty Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Princeton University. Dean Goldsmith's research interests are in information theory, communication theory, and signal processing, and their application to wireless communications and interconnected systems. She founded 2 technology companies and is board director of Medtronic and Crown Castle Incorporated. She's author of the book Wireless Communications, and her other extensive publication credits, awards, and board service are included on our symposium biography page. We're so pleased to have her leadership for the symposium and for the Big Data Alliance. Dean Goldsmith, over to you.
Welcome, everybody. Princeton is so thrilled to host this 8th annual New Jersey Big Data Alliance Symposium. And it is my great pleasure to welcome all of you virtually. Unfortunately, I wish it was in person, but I want to warmly welcome everyone from across the country, and particularly here in this wonderful state of New Jersey, university faculty, staff, students, and our partners in government, industry, and the nonprofit sector. I am the new Dean of Engineering and Applied Science at Princeton University. I started this role in September of last year. And this symposium is so central to some of the prime themes and vision that I have as the new Dean. So I just wanted to briefly mention what I'm hoping to accomplish in this role. I'm very excited to join the School of Engineering and Applied Science when it is growing. So we plan to grow our faculty and our graduate students and our postdocs significantly, and that is in order to have more impact of the engineering and technology that we create, not only on the companies around New Jersey, but also around the country and around the world. I'm also very excited to grow engineering within a liberal arts university, and that really ties into the theme of this symposium about how we use engineering and technology, and for this symposium, big data, to impact our communities and to impact society in positive ways. I'm also very excited to foster significantly more innovation, entrepreneurship, and ties with industry. And again, that's why I'm thrilled that we have the government and industry partners participating in this symposium. And finally, I'm excited to foster more diversity and inclusion in the School of Engineering and in the engineering profession. I truly believe that the profession cannot achieve its full potential unless we have diverse ideas and perspectives and people around the table that are developing our technology as well as the applications of our technology. And again, that ties in so well with the theme of this symposium. I am actually launching a number of initiatives as the new Dean of Engineering. Bioengineering is one of them. Smart cities is another, which I'll touch on. And data science, the broad field of data science, is a huge area that we're interested in as well, along with robotics and quantum. So let me come back to the theme of data science, which is really the central theme of this symposium. Obviously, it's a topic that has exploded. It's actually not a particularly well-defined science. What is data science? We are surrounded by an explosion of data that we're collecting through all of our digital devices. That data can be used in incredibly powerful ways to help us with disease diagnostics, to help us understand how to run our cities more efficiently. Even tracking the trajectory of the COVID pandemic is all based around data science. So it's a central topic in engineering and in the application of engineering and technology to society, to humanity. So it is a way for us to connect to our communities, to our cities, to our countries, to governments in other places. And really, I believe data science in the next few decades is going to be central to improving the human condition. And that actually ties into the theme of Princeton, which is our informal motto is to benefit the country and all humanity. And I think the data science is a very powerful tool for us to be able to do that. And again, that ties into what this symposium is all about, which is using data science together with our partners in the social sciences and in government to find ways to improve the human condition, to improve the efficiency of our cities and the safety of our cities, as well as in our smaller communities. How do we use data science to improve living conditions throughout our cities and the country and the world? So the nature of this symposium is really how data science connects with the social sciences in the context of our cities to address the really big challenges that our population, large segments of our population that live in cities, and a growing segment of our population that lives in cities faces. And that was true even before the pandemic. But now as we look at how the pandemic has affected cities and how cities will reemerge from the pandemic, data science can play a very crucial role in figuring out what has happened over the last year and a half to our cities and how we can rebuild them stronger, safer, better using this kind of data science. So I'd like to highlight a little bit beyond the topics in the symposium, and many of our speakers will touch on the topics that I just mentioned in terms of how data science can be used in the context of our cities. But also I want to talk about how important it is to have collaboration and coordination and using evidence-based innovation to the use of data science to improve our cities. To do this, we need in New Jersey a data science infrastructure, and that is what this New Jersey Big Data Alliance provides us with. It is not unique to Princeton, although I'm very happy that Princeton is hosting the Alliance this time, but it's really to partner with our fellow universities across the state and also our other stakeholders to create an infrastructure where we can not only collect the data that we need to apply it for the purpose of improving our cities and communities, but also develop the tools to process these large amounts of data so that we can extract the information that we need to use it in the most important ways that will have the biggest impact. So I'd like to kind of close by saying it's very important, everybody that's participating in this event, to help us as a community not only make this alliance stronger, but figure out what we need to do to collect the data that we need and how we can process that data. So I would like to encourage you throughout the symposium to connect with the people that are participating, not only the presenters, but also the organizations that are participating, any other participants, whether it's our students or the employers that are part of this symposium. Please, I know it's difficult in a virtual world, but I hope you will find ways through the symposium to connect with each other, not only throughout the next few days, but also beyond, especially as we emerge into a world where we're actually able to meet in person again. So with that, I'd like to close by inviting you to participate, enjoy, engage in the symposium. We are, again, very thrilled to be the host this year. And now I will turn it back to the organizing team.
Thank you so much, Dean Goldsmith, for your support of the symposium and the Alliance. Next, it's always a pleasure to introduce the Big Data Alliance's founder and president, Peggy Brennan-Tonetta. Peggy is Director of Resource and Economic Development at Rutgers, New Jersey Agricultural Experiment Station. Peggy's responsible for the leadership and strategic direction of broad-based university economic development initiatives involving university, government, industry engagement and support, which includes her leadership of the New Jersey Big Data Alliance. Over to you, Peggy.
Thank you so much, Spencer. And I'd just like to send out a tremendous thank you to you and the entire Princeton team for the fabulous work you did over the last few months in organizing this symposium and putting together a fabulous agenda, which I know everyone's going to really enjoy and find very informative and beneficial. Okay, there we go. So as Spencer had mentioned before, the NJBDA is a partnership of 16 New Jersey higher education institutions in NJ Edge. And we were established in 2013 to facilitate collaboration in advanced computing and data analytics, research, education, and technology. And our mission is to further build New Jersey's reputation as a leader in innovation, increase its competitive advantage, and catalyze data-driven economic development. Next. The members of the Big Data Alliance, the academic institutions, are shown on the left of this slide. And if you're employed at one of these universities, you are already a member of the Big Data Alliance. And if you'd like to get more involved with the work of the Alliance, you can go to our website and just click on contact and send us an email, and we'll be happy to include you in our mailing list and to provide you with opportunity to become more engaged in the work we're doing. We also have quite a few corporate members and also state and government agencies as well. To really be able to work together, this partnership really creates an opportunity for us to do projects and activities that really impact the state of New Jersey. Next. So just to give you a taste of some of the activities we're involved with, we're currently running an externship program for students at all of our member universities to work with companies in New Brunswick, Newark, and Cumberland County that are eligible. This is through a federally funded grant from the Economic Development Administration. And the program runs fall and spring semesters. And so if you're interested in participating in that program, as I said earlier, you can send us an email through the contact on our website. We also host numerous workshops that focus on using advanced technologies to improve business performance. And this fall, we'll be hosting a workshop in New Brunswick. We're also working with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority and New Jersey Cybersecurity Agency to develop a cybersecurity sandbox program where students can work with real-world data in solving cybersecurity problems. We're also launching a student study abroad program in partnership with Digital Jersey on the island of Jersey and the Channel Islands. So that's a program that will be starting in the fall as well. We'll also be collaborating with the company UBS in hosting our second pitch challenge for students to work on real world problems and have the opportunity to be mentored by UBS personnel. We're also in conversations with the IEEE and New Jersey Economic Development Authority to launch a clean energy student competition. There'll be more about that on our website as that gets more fully developed. And we've also just recently completed an entrepreneurship and innovation survey in collaboration with Tech United, and that results of that survey are being drafted as we speak, and that'll be available in the coming months. This gives you a taste of the types of projects that we work with. It's everything from helping students. We've also submitted joint research grants. So we really try to be very active in every aspect of getting the message about data science, big data, analytics out to the industry and academia and private sector. Next. One of our biggest accomplishments this year is that we launched our own journal, Journal of Big Data Theory and Practice. And we're currently soliciting submissions on all aspects of big data, AI, and machine learning application and practice. It has a rolling deadline. We just had a call for proposals for submissions in January. And so we're currently in the review process for those articles. And we should be publishing our first issue in the next month or so. And you can get more information about our journal at www.jbdtp.org or go to our website, www.njbda.org. And again, if you'd like to get more involved in the work that we're doing, just go to our website, to the contact page, and send us an email, and we'd love to have you be more involved in the work that we're doing. So that's it. Thank you so much for attending today, and I hope you really enjoy the presentations and the information that will be shared. It's everything from industry to academia to the public sector. So I think it'll be very informative no matter which sector that you're involved with. So have a great day and great day tomorrow as well. Thank you. Over to Spencer.
Thanks so much, Peggy. Absolutely. We're looking forward to as much engagement from the broad community as we can get. Love it. So this brings us to the keynote for today by Professor Stephen Goldsmith of Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. To introduce Professor Goldsmith, I'd like to welcome NJBDA's Matt Hale. Matt is Associate Professor in Seton Hall University's Department of Political Science and Public Affairs, where he is Chair of the Master of Public Administration program and where he teaches multiple core courses. He's also served as Borough Council member for Highland Park, New Jersey. So Matt is a true practitioner academic in service to New Jersey. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Spencer. So it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote today, Professor Stephen Goldsmith. Professor Goldsmith is the Derek Bach Professor of the Practice of Urban Governance and the Director of the Innovation for American Government program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. He previously served as Deputy Mayor for New York and as the Mayor of Indianapolis, which might actually mean that he is one of the few unique people who was on a Christmas card list for both Donald Trump and Mike Pence long before either one of them made it to the White House. Professor Goldsmith also directs the Data Smart City Solutions, which is a project that brings new technologies and connects them with data analytics to make sure that communities are working great. Stephen is the author of 8 and I think soon to be 9 books on cities, technology, and innovation, in addition to countless articles and public scholarship on the topic. We're very happy and very lucky that Stephen has agreed to join us today for his talk. If you have questions, please send them into the Q&A section of the webinar. We'll field them at the end. And without further ado, let me turn it over and thank very much Professor Stephen Goldsmith.
Thanks for the introduction. I don't often begin challenging the introduction, but I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, but let me just say that your assumption about my being on people's Christmas cards list is not necessarily accurate. That is as far as I'll go with that rebuttal. I do appreciate the introduction. I was thinking that that when you're saying Dean Goldsmith, that I've been promoted, and I was waiting for my moment in the sun and saw that there was a real Dean Goldsmith. So I've never had that experience before, so it's good to be present. What I thought I would do here just for 15 or 20 minutes is talk through some of the areas where big data, cities, public-private partnerships, universities come together to produce community value. I'm essentially a translator, right? My world is one where I listen to and hear the terrific thoughts of technologists and help translate those into applications in city, county, and town government and state government, but not federal government so much. So I'm just going to talk through some of those suggestions as we go through these slides. So let's run through them. So one way to kind of conceptualize this, right, is to say, well, you could do this in a number of different ways, but I thought we'd begin by saying, okay, let's think about this as governance, right? The data alliance that you're all about suggests appropriately that the framework of government is too narrow, right? That we're really thinking about network governance, like how do we bring together these sectors to produce value for our citizens and our residents? So what would those digital platforms look like? How do we use artificial intelligence and machine learning? How do we rethink the very definition and nature of assets that are on our streets and in our cities? And what does digital ubiquity mean, right? If everybody essentially almost now is their own traveling sensor and consumer of data as well. And then across the bottom of that is this kind of struggle that many cities, including those in New Jersey, are having, which is that the rules under which government is performance, right? Hierarchical control and command, top down, are pretty inconsistent with the fundamental opportunities that we have in the digital technology. So how do we accommodate that tension? Next slide, please. I want to start with a few examples. Like the purpose in my presentation is not to necessarily get you to do these examples, but to use the examples as illustrations of how the sectors and universities can come together. And this is a slide from Indianapolis. I've been doing some work and I just finished a manuscript on economic mobility in cities, and this is from Indianapolis. But the point is to say, okay, if we're concerned, as I hope everyone is on the Zoom today, with economic mobility, how do we use data to improve economic mobility? This is just a picture of Indianapolis that basically says on the left side, Indianapolis is really doing quite well, technology startups, et cetera. On the right side, it's not doing so well. It's had an 80% increase in poverty in the last decade, right? So this looks like a two-sided economy, to use the words of some of the economists who study this instead of me. Next slide. And we can see there's plenty of ways to look at this, but as you all know and feel and read about and in the papers, right, there's this increasing sense of anxiety about the future, driven not just by the inequities before COVID, but aggravated by COVID as well. And this was a few months ago, but 2/3 of the workers at that time were anxious about their jobs. Next slide. And as reported, and an issue of concern both to the administration in New Jersey and the federal government, is that these losses are felt disproportionately by folks of color, right? So if you see the anxiety lines for at the top for Black and Latinx, use 62 and 50% is quite high. Next slide. So this kind of brings me to how to think about what you all are about as an example of this, what this solution would be. And what I have here is just to say that data analytics can be the foundation for cross-sector collaboration. So if you thought about it, if one thinks about addressing upward mobility and equity in the workforce, you'd say, well, we need government, we need employers, we need the K-12 system, we need higher education, we need workforce partners. Each of them has a role, each of them does training. But if they don't operate collectively around a shared use and foundation of data and data analytics, the chances of maximizing the effectiveness of the resources is quite limited. So how do we bring folks together around data analytics to create a collaboration concerning issues such as the one that I'm profiling now. Next. So this is just a kind of continue to build out this example. The other examples I have will take less time. You'll be happy to know. But so if we think about this, what does that data hub look like? Well, there's data and job postings, like millions, hundreds of millions of job postings that can be mined to figure out what are the skills needed for those jobs. The traditional labor information is helpful, 18 billion data points, some of it a little dated, some not. Then we have posted resumes and profiles, which we can look at from LinkedIn and GitHub and Facebook, et cetera. Huge amounts of data. How do we analyze that data and make it usable for the regional economies that are represented in New Jersey? Next slide. And so one would think that we're going to use that data, then we'll figure out what certifications are missing or what core competitive clusters need training and certifications to fill open jobs. So this is I use this as an example for two reasons. One, I just turned in my manuscript 2 days ago on this subject, and I think it illustrates the best of what you're all about, which is the ability to bring folks together across sectors based on data. Next slide. So the next area that just to chat about a little bit would be how does data analytics and shared insights drive operational excellence in government in a way that improves the quality of life, right? That the platform supporting the way people live and work, how is that improved? And I mean, you're all here, so you know all of the technology applications in the sense of what's generally available. The issue is that that our appetite and ability to use what's available as a technical matter is not as developed as the technical work itself. So let's look at just a couple of examples here of what that would be. Now, this is a pretty simple slide, but I thought it might provoke some ideas. So when I was deputy mayor of New York, trying to figure out how to make these stories short since I've been in government for so long, I have a lot of stories. There were a lot of routines, right? Back when I was there, I don't know what that was, 7 or 8 years ago, the fire department would begin its inspections on building 1 and go to building 400,000 if I could get there before the year was over in terms of fire inspections. But of course, the fires don't occur in buildings in that fashion. They occur based on a set of risk factors. So how would you predict which buildings are likely to have a fire and organize your inspection around it? Well, Chicago did something similar, which said that we only have so many restaurant inspectors. Instead of going restaurant 1, restaurant 2, restaurant 3, what if we harvested the data to predict which restaurants are most likely to have foodborne illnesses based on a set of factors? Right. Well, Chicago had a very good data infrastructure, but only a limited number of data analysts. So the algorithms written to predict this work on the part of the inspectors was done by a group of analysts at Allstate Insurance, right? That were loaned to the city of Chicago, while they're still at Allstate, and they helped work this through. And not only did they look at the information in the official Chicago restaurant inspection portfolios, but they looked at Yelp reports and social media reports, right? And thought more broadly about predicting risk. So I think this is a great example of data from multiple places and teamwork in order to produce a solution. Next slide. I heard in the introduction that one of your goals is capstones. And let me just give you an aside, just really for a quick second. I was teaching at Columbia while I was in New York, and Columbia needed capstone projects. So we have all that data in our 311 records. That this was we were trying to become the first city to have a data analytics center when I worked for Mayor Bloomberg, but we didn't have any capacity at the time. So I asked Columbia if they could do the following. If they could I said, we'll make all the 311 data available to you. I have some ideas, you have some ideas. Tell me how you would use that data to make us operate more quickly and assign that to a team of capstone students, right? And they basically said, we work to say we want to figure out how to reduce flooding and icing of city streets. So we'll look at tree foliage, we'll look at the maintenance records, we'll look at fill in, there's 4 or 5 more examples. But the point is, they came back and said, you know, if you change your maintenance records, if you change the type of grates you have so that the water doesn't do this and that, you can actually reduce the overflows by 2/3. So we can do that across areas. And the same is true in the way we regulate. I mean, in all of our cities and states are kind of struggles. We have these new forms of services and how cities regulate, and a new form of regulation needs to accommodate the fact that there's a huge amount of data generated that can be used for regulatory purposes, but in a different form. And this is just to suggest that there's new and old regulatory models, if you think about it, for TMCs or the like. Next slide. Another way to analyze this and think about it would be in terms of public-private partnerships. And there are private companies and university partnerships who have insights on how to make X, in this case, city buses or diesels or garbage trucks, work and operate better for the benefit of their citizens, right? So how that bus has, I don't know, a couple hundred sensors in it. It has sensors in the, and how often the driver puts his foot on the brake and how often the doors are open, and fill in the blank, and, you know, how hot is the engine, and what about the exhaust system? And all of that generates information for predictive analytics. There are companies that look at the same for garbage trucks, but then they also equip the garbage trucks with sensors. So if you look at a garbage truck, is it a garbage truck or is it a rolling sensor platform? And what do you do with those? So just lots of examples where the private sector could suggest to the government sector, as well as the engineering school, places like Princeton and other places, like partnerships where we will take your transactional data and we'll turn that into value. Next slide. Same is true of evaluating performance and equity, right? I was a district attorney for a long time, and the ability to use university partnerships to evaluate what happens in a criminal justice policy, not just for equity, although that's obviously the most important, but also for terms of, if you do this intervention, does it make a difference? And so the partnerships that are possible between universities on research, right? So just pure research on whether a program works are enormously helpful. I run a program at Harvard for chief data officers from 20 cities. Many of those cities are mid-size and have benefited from interns and master's students that are embedded in city government as well. Next slide. South Bend, when Mayor Pete was there, and now as well, was very sophisticated with the use of data. But one of the reasons it was able to be very sophisticated with the use of data is because it had not only interns, but had the benefit of several different departments at Notre Dame, which was, you know, down the street essentially. And they built a very sophisticated approach, including using data to help folks who couldn't easily get to work, building first and last mile solutions as well. I write a little column about some of these things. If anybody wants to follow up, I can send them as well. Next slide. Beth mentioned this in her introduction about the exemplary work in New Jersey. One additional way to conceptualize this is that, right, the goal isn't to have so much data that professional bureaucrats, and I don't say that in a pejorative sense, right, because I was one, that they think that they have all the answers. The goal is to use data collaboratively to unlock solutions and involve communities. And open data doesn't do that unless it's well visualized. And the best way to visualize it and tell a story is in a map, right? And so the COVID mapping of, you know, what places are safe or where are the outbreaks, or because people care about what happens in the world, but they care most about what happens in their neighborhood. And so turning data into action requires visualization, not just open data. These are some examples, and there's obviously terrific ones throughout New Jersey as well. The one on the right deals with the census. Okay, now just a couple more points, hopefully to provoke some suggestions or questions. So another way to conceive of this is to say, Hey, Kate, go back to the just-in-time slide, the Chicago. Okay, so this is Argonne Laboratory sensors in Chicago. And I only put this out there to suggest the following, right? So government, when I was a mayor of Indianapolis, and even when I worked for Mike a little bit, the definition of performance is how fast we responded to a 311 complaint. Well, that's okay, but if you think about it, that's a pretty imperfect outcome, right? The goal should be how to use data to make sure that the problem didn't occur in the first place, right? I mean, how do we know that have the street light tell us before it burns out? This is an example of say we have a lot of inequities driven in our system by poor environmental situations in neighborhoods that are challenged, right? Well, how do we think about air quality as it relates to the opportunities of children? Well, in Chicago, Argonne Laboratories has these air sensors throughout the city that send information on various toxic levels, allow earlier interventions and preemptive planning. And you can do those sensors across a broader area. Next slide, please. One of the greatest opportunities, I think, for collaboration such as yours is that the problem isn't the answer, the problem is the question, right? The challenge is the quality of the question. So how do we think about things differently? And I just put these up here just to maybe raise the following. What do you see on the left, right? Well, previously people thought that was a light pole, but it may not. It may be a vertical mall that holds 5G cells and other sensors, right? So what is it? Is it a light pole or is it a vertical mall? The garbage truck, is it a garbage truck or is it a rolling sensor platform? You've all seen the Link NYC platforms. What is that, right? Is it when I started on that issue in New York City, those were telephone booths, right? Now there's sensor platforms, interactive chargers, et cetera, maps, community information, et cetera. So we have an opportunity together to reimagine assets, and almost all of these ideas have come from the private sector or the university sector into government as partnerships. Next slide. I think we're about done. The same is true. Interestingly, as I mean, the world is all now about platforms. Everything is a platform that's innovative, right? Well, let me go back again when I was in New York City, right? We had Taxi and Limousine Commission, and we had another group that managed TNCs and Ubers, and of course MTA had buses and subways, and DOT managed bikes, and everybody managed bridges, and everybody did a really professional job of managing what they were supposed to manage, right? And I guess I was supposed to coordinate. But is that really the way we want to think about mobility and sustainability and environmental quality in the city? We ought to think about it as a system. And in this case, the system maybe have a subpart, which is curb, sidewalk, and road management. How do we bring together all that data on a platform? What are the privacy rules? Who can have access to it? How is it anonymized? But how does that collectively allow us to manage the quality of life in the city, right? So the ability to bring these things together as a system is critical. Next slide. And then lastly, just to make a point I think I mentioned before, so okay, we can run through these pretty quickly, is that if it's not well visualized, it's not really that helpful. On the right, the thing that's scrolling is Mayor Garcetti with a little prod from the LA Times, mapped the quality of city services versus the demographics in LA neighborhoods to see whether the sanitation conditions in neighborhoods that were poor matched the sanitation conditions in terms of what the government was doing in wealthier communities, and then discovered, unfortunately, that there was a difference in service quality and timeliness. And then he addressed it, right? And did it in all very public and transparent way. More power to him. Upper left is a little thing we used in New York City, which is just to visualize the 311 complaints, make that available to community groups with software that allowed them to look at the problems in those communities. By each of those yellow dots, the larger the yellow dot, the greater the number of complaints, and the community group now has software that allows them to, or at least it did at the time, to look through those yellow dots and see what the nature of the problems are. Instead of one of the reasons that we have green taxis in the outer boroughs of New York City is because that the small box on the left, all the yellow when we said, can we improve tax? This is at the beginning of TNC's Uber, Lyft, et cetera. We said, can you improve taxi service in the outer boroughs? The yellow said we have plenty of taxis, and we said, well, let's look at the GPSs from, every time the taxi flag goes down, the meter starts, it sends a GPS signal. Well, 97.5% of pickups at that time were, south of 116th Street and the rest of Manhattan. The other 2.5% were the rest of the boroughs and the rest of Manhattan, right? So data can drive the co-production of public services. That's the point of this. So look at it, visualize it, and then that provides solutions, particularly if we involve the neighborhoods. Last slide, I think, or last, yeah. So we close with a commercial. These are some recent books. The one on the right's about to come out. The one on the left is a new operating system for cities. And the one in the center is one that Kate Coleman and I wrote on growing fairly. It'll be out in October. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and we have some time for questions. That's as fast as I can talk. I hope that fits in with the speed of New Jersey speakers.
Fantastic. And thank you very much, Professor. That's very insightful stuff. We do have a bunch of questions, and when we jump right into them. So the first one that we got was the collaborations between the public sector and the business sector clearly have to happen for data innovation to sort of move forward. But we often feel sometimes like they're talking different languages in terms of timeframes, in terms of processes and all of those. And so as we're moving towards the collaborative environment, what are some ideas or thoughts about ways of helping businesses and government sort of talk to each other in a meaningful kind of way?
I've done a fair amount of work in public-private partnerships. I have a 4-day answer to that question. It's just packed with lots of stuff. So the first problem, of course, is that government procurement is designed for a long gone age, right? And some of the government procurement cycles actually exceed the life cycle of the technology that they're procuring. It's really quite odd. And the other challenge in the procurement is that if you procurement generally has been done very prescriptively, so that the procurement sets out what they want to buy. But really what you want to do with a consortium like this is buy innovation, right? So you want to say, here's the problem I want to solve. Maybe you do an RFQ, request for qualifications or ideas before you do an RFP, but you want to be able to buy innovation to solve a problem, not tell the vendor what you want them to do. I mean, in some cases you will, but not in many. So we have to think about a different way to procure. Bloomberg Philanthropies has been active in that area, as have others, and it's a very important issue. So that's one. A second area answer to your question is that, and by the way, I think the best way to do this is for government to issue just a really like a tube. I don't know, like 20 years ago, Mayor Daley trying to figure out who he should hire to manage the second Mayor Daley to manage the parks in that beautiful Lake Michigan shore. Couldn't quite figure out how to write the RFP. Told his parks department, just send out a 2 or 3 page RFP and say, what should we be doing on our parks that's good for our public, and how can we afford it, right? So that's another issue. I think, Matt, that's particularly important is the role of the public and the private is difficult because there are very important public interests that the public has to control, right? What's privacy rules? What are the security rules? What can you do with the data? Can you sell the data or not, right? Things that we almost never get right. And so the public needs to understand in a public-private partnership clearly what it can do and set those rules out of bounds. And lastly, I just think as sophisticated as this stuff is, I don't think there's a city in the country, including New York or LA or Newark or wherever the Trenton case may be, that has the in-house sophistication to negotiate with the vendor here, because the technologists are way ahead of the city. So I think that requires on the bigger transactions that the city or town or state, even New Jersey, I think, be represented by somebody with experience in that area, either technologist or an attorney or the like. So I mean, there's much more to it, but lastly, I'd say the following. I think it's helpful, it's critical that the public-private partnerships involving technology use congruence of interest, so that as you look out, the interests of the company in making money and the interests of the city are aligned, because when they get misaligned, it's a recipe for disaster.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. So our next question was a concern about the possibility is, as we're building algorithms, as we're doing this, many of the things that you spoke about were things about infrastructure, buses and lighting and all of those types of things. But there is sort of a concern that sometimes algorithms can be built with bias in the middle of them, and that it rather than helping equity issues and diversity issues, it may embed them. And so if you have any thoughts about ways of working in that area, that'd be great.
You're trying to get all the simple questions out of the way first. Is that?
You know, we're tough in New Jersey. It's tough questions all the way around.
You fit your reputation. I don't know, man. Well, let me say two things. One, you didn't ask me about. I hope to do some more writing and advocating. I hope that the president's infrastructure plan includes, by definition, sensor platforms in it. It makes no sense. This is not a criticism of administration. I would just say it's a new day, and managing well the life cycle of infrastructure, preemptively using bridge sensors and the platforms we talked about is critical. So that, I hope. Now, your other question is too important to pretend I can give an answer in 30 seconds. Let me just say this. It's just like everything else we're talking about. The data can aggravate a problem or it can solve a problem. If plenty of examples, I was a DA. If I think back about, all the young men who were arrested for marijuana, obviously they are disproportionately Black. They were Black in Indianapolis. I assume that they're Black and Hispanic in New York City, right? If you train on that data, you're going to get algorithms that are filled with biases. I would just say, however, that the answer is not to use the algorithms. The answer is to use the algorithms to uncover the bias and then compensate for it in the training data. Because you could use data, you could use algorithms and data today to identify police officers who are disproportionately likely to end up in an aggressive situation with a resident. One could do that, right? But or you could train unthinkingly on old criminal justice data. Or, I mean, I had the former chief data officer for New York City, a friend, taught my class recently, and he said, I grew up across from a project in New York City. He's a PhD, African-American guy. And he said, I got the 3-1, and when I was in New York City, they showed me the 3-1 data about where rats were. And so because you wanted to map the rat infestation, he said, and when I was working in New York City Hall as chief data officer, I knew that the project across the street didn't have any rats, right? Didn't show any rats at all. And he said, it's impossible. I live there. I know that there are rats everywhere. So what was it? Well, it turns out that the folks in that community had given up on government. They just didn't report the rat infestations, right? So the algorithm that suggested where to go solve the rat problems was actually loaded with bias based on how. So you just have to have. I think another message here, Matt, and I'll stop talking so you ask other questions, is that the algorithms need to be transparent and they need to be challengeable, and they need to have the involvement of people who live in a community or who've experienced a problem, who can say, wait a minute, hold it, this isn't quite right. You've missed the point here. That's the way to kind of even it out.
Great. Okay. So another question that is maybe, again, a New Jersey focused question. We have more municipalities in New Jersey than California does. We have a lot of little places, right? So, that when you're talking about aggregating data in Los Angeles or New York, that's big data. But what about for smaller places when you have, and we have a lot of those in New Jersey at the really small level. Any ideas about how local municipalities might be able to work on and work with big data when they just don't have that many folks?
Are you still an official in Highland Park?
Well, this is actually because my town has 14,000 people in it, and it's 1.8 square miles. So it's a very important question to me.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple ways to think about this, and actually it's a perfect question for this group. So I think there's a substantial role for either the state, and Beth's one of the leaders in the country on this, or a private or a university to think about what a shared service platform is like, right? So, I mean, you want to have local decisions, and there's a lot of local decisions in New Jersey. I appreciate that fact. You want to have local decisions, but you want to be able to do it with a sophistication of national or statewide. And B, obviously, you can't do sophisticated analytics if you don't have very much data, right? Because your predictions are going to be not going to be very good either. I was thinking about this, Matt, with respect to 311 data. You could, when I got to New York City, the problems were not categorically different than Indianapolis. They were just hugely bigger and more complicated, right? The name of the problem. So I think you could do a shared service that would, particularly when you're buying solutions in the cloud that allows Highland Park to only, buy only what it needs, but then the state or somebody else could help with service. And one way to think about this, I just did this interview with a leader at the YMCA of the USA in Chicago, right? And that's a $7 billion organization, but there's a lot of little Ys around the country. So she bought a master license to the software, right, and developed the analytics in-house, and then is helping the affiliates, or whatever the right word is, utilize that data to solve their local problems. So I think there's a role here for kind of blended solutions.
Fantastic. So one last, well, it's not going to be a quick question because they're asking tough ones. But one of the questions is, you spoke at the beginning about economic mobility and how we work on economic mobility issues, and the question is about the trend that you see as a result of the pandemic. How you see this, how are we going to snap back post-pandemic, and your thoughts about the relationship there?
Well, I think these answers, by the way, are depending on regional economies. New Jersey is kind of is interesting and challenging and complex because of the way that it breaks out regionally. So obviously the service industry is disproportionately affected, and the service industry / hospitality industry is disproportionately Hispanic and Black, African American. So we'll see that linger for some time. The opportunity, I think, is the following. The growth in mid-skill jobs, think X-ray technician, or actually tool and die operator, which is all now data-driven job. Those demands for those jobs are growing faster than the supply of available talent. There's actually millions of those jobs that are open. So the question becomes, how do we move up folks that have been disproportionately affected? And one way to think about this is, think about the waiter, waitress, or bartender, or even the night manager of the Hyatt bar, right? The Hyatt's now closed. Well, she had a lot of talent, right? She balanced the books, she closed out the register, she made sure that people were there on time. She had talent. Now she doesn't know how to, she doesn't have the technical skills. So the question would be, how do we create the ladders to do that? And what my presentation suggested is we need an intermediary in each region who brings the data together. Then we analyze that data to figure out kind of what are the training programs that are being offered, what are the community college programs that are being offered, there's some very sophisticated, IBM is doing some badging work that is really quite impressive in terms of helping people move up. Just a long way of saying, the recent information that came out of the census shows this, right, this reversing in terms of the number of people being born, right? We're actually we're becoming substantially less capable of replenishing ourselves, right? So we have jobs, empty jobs, and over time we're not going to have enough people. The problem is we have this dislocation between folks who've been adversely affected. I think that's an opportunity. Let me just close. I know our time's up, Matt, by just saying the following. I've been in government a long time. I've been in academia for a while. I've been in the private sector for a while. The problems that cities, states face today obviously are much more significant than any other time. But also are the technology tools that we have to address those problems. I don't think there's a better time has been a better time in the last century to rethink these relationships and the ability to produce public value. There's even the tools that are available today compared to when I was in New York City are so much dramatically better. It's an opportunity for us to produce public value at enormous new scope and scale. So it's been my pleasure to join you for this kickoff today. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic talk. We appreciate it. Your insights and your style and your conversational, the chat's blowing up with praise about this event. So we really do appreciate that. We appreciate the help with your assistant, Kate. She was wonderful as well. And thank you so much for joining us for a fantastic talk. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Spencer, and we'll move along. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Stephen and Matt. Great discussion, and a really wonderful foundation for bringing in the perspectives from other cities around the country in our next session.